You're listening to 88.7 WLUW Chicago Sound Alliance, broadcasting from the campus of Loyola University. It's live from the Heartland, featuring Katy, Hogan, and Thom Clark. On today's show, we delve deeply into one of Chicago's cultural hallmarks, gospel music, and Mahalia Jackson. Our guests are Bob Marovich, host of Gospel Memories, Jackie Taylor, Black Ensemble Theater founder and CEO, also playwright and director of Mahalia with Robin DaSilva, the actor who plays Mahalia. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
We're doing church up in here today. We are so doing church up in here today. That was Mahalia Jackson, who you're going to hear more of in this show. We want to welcome a very familiar face and our guy who follows us every Saturday morning, Bob Marovich, host and incredible guy who has also authored a new book that we are so impressed with. Normally you host the Gospel Hour after us, Old Time Gospel.
Yeah, Gospel Memories.
Gospel Memories. Sorry,
That's right.
So welcome to Live from the Heartland. Not the first time, but the first time in a long time.
Yes, thank you, Katy. Thank you, Thom. Thank you for having me on the show.
Your
It's an
book-
incredible book, but I really
you.
think it's like an old multi-disc LP album with
Yes.
all sorts of liner notes that happens to have discs in the back.
Bingo.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. What is Malaco?
It's well, it was founded in the late '60s by Tommy Couch and Mitchell Maloof. Really came out of a company that they had doing booking for artists to different colleges, and then they formed a studio, and then they formed a label. And Malaco is probably better known for some of the pop hits that they had, R&B, like Mr. Big Stuff. Remember that one? There was
Mr. Big
Mr.
Stuff.
Big Stuff was in one of theirs. They had Ring My Bell came out of that studio.
Yeah.
Gene, so all of these artists, that came out of Malaco back in the day. Let's see, who else? Groove Me by King Floyd was another one. Misty Blue, Dorothy Moore. But in the early 1970s, they accidentally got into gospel music, and it really changed the trajectory of their success.
And Malaco was here in Chicago? No.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Jackson,
Always in
Mississippi.
Jackson, yeah.
Yeah.
Always in Jackson.
And, okay. How did you get started on this volume? This is not your first go-round.
No. I had done a City Called Heaven, which
Yes.
was all focused on Chicago and the birth of gospel music. I had been doing and have continued to do biographical sketches on artists for the Malaco website. 2 or 3 years ago, Tommy Couch Jr., who's now president, had asked me would I do that. They have a new website, and they're trying to put 300, 400, 500-word bios on every one of the artists in their catalog, which, because they license a number of labels, they have... there's more than 200 gospel artists just in gospel, not including. So I've only been doing the gospel part, and I've been doing that. So last February 2018, Tommy Couch Jr. contacted me, and so he knew my work through the bios and said, would I be interested in doing the liner notes for this? I mean, I think originally we were looking at it sort of like the 30th anniversary book that they put out, which was focused on the Mr. Big Stuffs and the Groove Me's. And Rob Bowman wrote that book, where it was a CD set with the book in a box, sort of a traditional box set.
Right.
And that's what they originally wanted to do.
But you took it in a different way.
Well, yeah, what happened was Tommy Couch Sr. and I really bonded, and he liked what he was reading of my work. And about middle way through the project, he said, I've got this idea of, rather than having it be a more traditional box, to make it a coffee table book. They're also planning a coffee table book on their R&B and soul side as well.
Okay.
But he said, let's turn this into a coffee table book where the pictures and the narrative is front and center, and the CDs are in the back.
So
So
this
that was
is
his idea.
indeed a coffee table book.
It is.
It's big. It's The Gospel According to Malaco by Robert Marovich, who we're talking to right now, celebrating 75 years of gospel music. No one better, evidently.
It's so interesting. I just ran across an email yesterday from a gentleman I had been talking to, and this was back in 2017, and I had forgotten. For Bob Porter, who's a jazz aficionado and historian, and he said, Tommy Couch Jr. had been talking to me that they're going to do history, and I think you'd be the guy to write it. Well, it was 2017. I was like, that'd be very flattering, but never expect anything like that to happen. And then February of last year, Tommy Jr. called and said, let's do this. And I have to say, it was really, I mean, I sometimes are a little embarrassed that my name's on the front because this is, I mean, Dennis Heckler designed this. That's one of their label
Guys.
covers. Yeah, he does that.
And that's why it looks like an LP.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Heckler is their guy for design. He did a marvelous job. They collected pictures. And the team, Tommy Jr., Tommy Sr., Stuart Madison, Daryl Luster, James Robinson, they all got together. They really intentionally picked the music to reflect the various areas of the country where gospel's
So we're
popular.
going to try to sample some of the music in this as we go along here. Do you want to say a little bit about our first one here?
I know I've been changed. I thought this would be a good one because this is from 1991, but it sounds older than that. It's like one of those old congregational type songs. LaShawn Pace from the Anointed Pace Singers did this, and it's basically a drum and LaShawn and the choir.
Why did this kind of music come up from the South and become known as, Chicago's the home of gospel music?
Yeah.
Because obviously it was all around the country.
It was, yeah. The Great Migration really is the reason. When you were a migrant coming to Chicago, really all you had with you was a few belongings and your religion, if you were religious, or your music if you weren't religious.
Right.
And you brought that to Chicago, and what became sort of the Chicago sound was taking that sound, that congregational singing sound, the old hymns, the old spirituals, and giving them the beat of the city. So when Thomas A. Dorsey was starting to write his music in the late 20s, early 30s, he took the jazz sound from Chicago, the blues sound, and mixed it with the religious lyrics to give it a new sound for a new generation.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland, not Gospel Memories.
Right.
You might be confused. We'll sound a lot alike right now.
Right.
But Bob Marovich, you have really created a beautiful book here, and also put together in the fact that you've got 8, count them, 8 CDs
Yes.
packed into the back. I mean, this is a wonderful. This is giving me ideas about the Heartland book that we're working on.
Exactly.
Because I want video as part of that book.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, because, I mean, we were the age. So
Yeah.
I love that you have worked with these old-time guys. Is Senior still alive?
Senior, and not only is he still alive, he really is the producer of this. I mean, he shepherded this from really beginning to end, all the way to getting the design, the printing, the distribution. Really, Tommy Sr. his stamp is all over this book.
Is he so happy with it?
He is very happy with it. Yes, it's the nice thing about it is, and I say this even if I had not had done a thing with it, is it's the nicest and most comprehensive collection for gospel. Typically, when you have a gospel box set, it focuses on a particular genre or an area, an artist. But because Malaco has so many labels that it licenses, it could go back to the 1940s and showcase every genre in gospel music, including, and this is what I think is the most important about this book, the mass choir movement. For some reason, and really I think it's more of the collector's proclivities than anything, a lot of this history kind of ends about 1970. So when you get into the Hawkins era, the Andre Crouch era, the Thomas Whitfield era, the historians are not as interested in that, have not been as interested in that era. largely because I think there's always been a kind of a bias towards studying gospel as it relates to the development of rock and roll and soul. And so, but not what inspired the church. So what this book does is it really highlights the music that African Americans heard on the radio at the time. These aren't obscure collections at all. These are really the songs that were on the radio that choirs would learn. The choir directors would get the album and learn the song and teach it. And also were the ones on the Billboard charts. If you just go online and you look at a Billboard chart from the gospel chart from the 80s, say, you're going to see mass choir, community choir, church choir. It was the era of the choirs, and Savoy Records, which is a large part of this because they have the rights to Savoy's gospel catalog, really was the forerunner in the choir sound going back to the 60s.
How did Malaco get the Savoy Records? How did they swing that deal?
It was, they found out it was for sale.
Wow.
It had been under Arista. When Herman Lubinsky died, it was bought by Arista. And then they had sold it to Prelude. And Prelude it wasn't their music. They were getting into more pop music. And so they formalized the deal and bought the entire collection at the end of 1986. Tommy Sr. talks about, and Stuart Madison, who's their business manager, talks about how they had to get it was like 12 or 13 semi-truckloads worth of materials from New York, and all these storage units around New York and New Jersey where the Savoy stuff was, they shipped it all the way to Jackson, Mississippi, where they have it all now. The original tapes, what's really cool, Wolf Stevenson, who's sort of their iconic producer, he did, all these great songs from the past that Malaco's known for. He and his team, Kent Bruce and all, did the mixing and mastering directly from, for the most part, the original tapes. So the richness and the warmth and the CD quality is because for the first time, you really have CDs that are made up of the original Savoy tapes.
Could you tell us about this next one with Alberta Walker?
Yeah, this one
Albertina.
She's our former Queen of Gospel, the late Albertina Walker. This really kind of brought her career back. The Caravans had sort of phased out in the 70s, and Calvin Bridges wrote a song called I Can Go to God in Prayer, and teamed it up with Albertina Walker and the Lighthouse Baptist Church Choir, and they had a massive hit back in the 1980s.
Makes no difference what the problem.
We're coming back here with Bob Marovich, our neighbor DJ on the radio station, and we're doing little bits of this incredible masterpiece that he's put together with his buddies from Jackson, Mississippi. The Gospel According to Malaco, which is the name of a record company that had all these. How accomplished do you feel? Sit with this big thing sitting here in front of you.
It's so amazing to think that we basically spent 10 months, and when I saw it, I was just stunned. You see it in your mind's eye, and I'm such the narrative guy, and so I saw the black and white words and stuff. But when I saw the book, I thought, oh my gosh, what have they done? This is just like the best looking piece I've ever seen in the gospel, and the music. I really again commend them for really picking the songs that were popular. that people would remember.
So we're only a few weeks away from one of the first music festivals of the summer here in Chicago, Gospel Fest.
Yes.
What are a couple acts that people shouldn't miss this
Well,
year?
Sadly, they haven't decided yet. It's still under...
I couldn't find a program. That's why I'm asking you.
I think we're just a week or two away. I think last year they decided like mid-April. But I will say, historically, they've tried to blend Chicago artists with a local, a national touring group. So they've had various groups that, have the big artists.
Yeah.
So these would be, and a number of them are Chicagoans. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see Brian Courtney Wilson, who is a Chicagoan or Chicago suburban guy, who's been nominated for a Grammy and is for a Billboard Music Awards. Jonathan McReynolds, who's sort of the new wunderkind for gospel. He's also a Chicagoan. He had a Grammy nomination. He's got a Billboard Awards, Stellar Awards and so forth. And Todd Dulaney, he was a former baseball player who quit baseball and became a gospel singer. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see one, two, or all three of those during Gospel Fest this year, as well as, people like Fred Hammond, Yolanda Adams, Kirk Franklin. They tend to tour on big national tours during the summer, and they may well be here, as well as a lot of Chicago choirs and groups that are just local.
So tell us about this last piece here by the Gospel Class.
Well, anybody who grew up in the 60s and 70s in Chicago and listened to Herb Kent on WVON will remember Open Our Eyes. That was his theme. He would close the show with that. It was the product of a group out of Newark, New Jersey called the Gospel Clefs, who were very different and kind of heralded the contemporary gospel sound even in the 50s. And that was sort of a prayer for brotherhood and peace, which makes sense for Live from the Heartland, because that's what you're all about.
Makes sense for everybody, every time, all the time.
And they were saying it in 1958, and here we are in 2019, and we're still saying it.
And we should be.
Yes.
Open our eyes that we may see to follow thee. Lord, grant us thy loving peace, and let all dissension cease.
Oh man, this is great. You listen to this music all the time, Bob Marovich. You must be just one of the most blessed souls. Happy guy.
Well, my wife had often mentioned she thinks it's my gospel music. Back in 2012, I had a terrible car accident. I was in my little Miata. 10 years to the day that I owned that car, and I was on I-57, and I spun off the road on the ice and flipped over 2 or 3 times without a scratch. Of course, the car was destroyed, but I wasn't. So she said, it's that gospel music that's keeping you going.
There you
Shine
go.
on, my brother. Listen in the hour after us for Bob Marovich every week on WLUW.
And the book with 8 discs is The Gospel According to Malachi.
Yes.
Check it out.
Thanks so much, Bob. We'll see you in the booth.
Yeah, see you in the booth. Thanks for having me on this side of the glass. Thank you for having me on the show.
What
You're
a
listening
treat.
to Live from the
thank you.
Heartland on WLUW Chicago 88.7. Please check us out with our new Spotify site for all the music we play. We'll be collecting there. And now a little bit of Mahalia.